JPMorgan Chase has assets of over $2.6 trillion with a T. They're in over 100 countries and they have 260,000 employees worldwide. And getting employed by them, interviewing with them, and landing a job is really competitive. But it's about to become a lot less competitive for you, because you have started the 5-part video series, How to Get a Job with JPMorgan Chase. Throughout these 5 videos, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to land a job with JPMorgan Chase. Today is video 1 of 5. And in today's video, I'm going to give you actual interview questions you will get in your interview with JPMorgan Chase, and I am going to teach you how to answer them from a recruiter's perspective. Make sure you stay to the end, because at the very end of the video, I will actually direct you right here to the next video in the series. And if you watch all 5, you will put yourself at a significant advantage when it comes to getting the job with JPMorgan Chase. All right, let's get started. Now, the first question is, describe your most challenging team assignment and how you handled it. Now, a few things here. Whenever you're asked a question by a company, you want to think a little bit about the why. Why did they ask me this? And the first thing that comes to mind is they're talking about team, right? So right away, team. So team is important to them. Handling challenge situations with grace is important to them. These are things that come to mind. Now, I've gone through and I've looked at a bunch of the questions they asked during the interview process, and team has come up time and time again. So make sure when you're answering any of these questions, you're letting them know that you appreciate being part of a high-performing team, and that's important to you. Now, when you're answering this question in particular, there are a few things that come to mind. You want to be positive about this. Whenever you're talking about a challenge you faced in the working environment, you want to be positive. If you come off as negative during your interview, you're going to see him as someone who does not embrace challenge and easily goes into negative mode or goes into negativity, and you don't want that. Another thing that's really important, they're talking about challenge. What the challenge should not be is the people you collaborated with. So if a previous situation in your work, you had trouble working with people, you want to use a different example. What the challenge should be is the issue you all were resolving. What was the project you were on? The challenge ideally would involve the complexity of the project you were working on, as opposed to the interpersonal dynamics, because if you make it about that, they might think that you were challenging to work with. So what does answering this actually look like? Well, you want to walk them through the project you were on, what the impact was, what was your role in the team, what you did to successfully complete it, and then what was the outcome of this? And then ideally, what did you learn? If you can walk through and take them through a situation, what was the situation you were in, what was the task you were working, what was the specific action you took, what were the results, and then what did you learn? This would be great. Now, I can't give you an exact how to answer this, because this will be specific to you, your career, and what you've done. But a few major takeaways: do not be negative about this. Do not have the difficulty be your team. Make it the complexity of the project. Okay, that's really important. And ideally, you make it related to the role you were interviewing for, right? Your project, if it's something completely unrelated to what you're interviewing for, that only helps you so much. But if there was a direct correlation of the task you completed in your answer example and the tasks you would be working towards completing in the role you're interviewing for, that makes it come off as a much more powerful answer. Now, this next question is an absolute classic. How do you handle your calendar when you have multiple projects competing for your time? This is basically the classic, how do you handle competing deadlines? And I think there's a few things here. You have to demonstrate in your answer that you don't get flustered here. It's really important to showcase your communication, with your manager, that you're sharing, hey, this is a situation, getting their perspective on what needs to be prioritized, and then good communication throughout, so that you're working towards completing them. So I will give you an example. I'll answer this from your perspective so you can see how to replicate this in the interview, but your answer should sound something like this. Oh, that's a really good question. And in my last job, I've actually had this quite a few times. And what I found is key is talking with my manager and communicating things clearly, letting them know that both of these deadlines, I won't be able to complete the project, both of them, by this time. So I get their perspective on what is important, what's the priority, and then I work towards completing that first, all the while communicating them when I expect to be able to finish, and then I move on to the next one. What's happened in the past is they said, oh, thanks for communicating this, Ben. Focus on this, and we'll allocate this other project to somebody else. So it's really important to communicate that. That way no one's surprised, and you can move through your different items strategically and efficiently. And there you go. If you answer it something like that, they'll understand that you get the big picture, that you need to communicate things to your manager, you understand the strategy, and you understand that you can't just do it. You can't just work hard and accomplish both these things. In this situation, it was impossible. So what do you do when that's the case? You communicate, you delegate when necessary, and you get the perspective of your boss. That way you can complete the goals they feel are the priority first. The next question is, rank the 3 skills you consider to be most important to this job. This one is an interesting question, and I don't hear it a lot, but a bit of a cheat code for this, and this is from someone who's got about 15 years experience in recruitment, is whenever you look at a job description, the tasks are usually in descending order of importance. So the first task is most important. Second is usually second most important. Third is third most important. So what you might want to do is when you're talking through this answer, you want to be familiar with the job description, but then those top 3, well, in whatever order you determine to be most relevant or most important, you want to share basically those 3. Those top 3 things, well, they're probably the top 3 most important priorities. If you've got a bit of a different perspective, feel free to do that if you feel it makes sense. But generally speaking, when answering this question, you want to look at the job description, you want to familiarize yourself with it, look at those top 3 bullets, and those are the responsibilities that are most important. So when I was doing this, I'd walk them through that, not in their exact words, I'd paraphrase, but then I'd also share why I thought these were important, right? So when you're going through, don't just go 1, 2, 3, but 1, and this is why it's important, 2, this is why it's important, 3, this is the impact of that. Make sure you do that. It allows them to understand that you don't just get what is most important for the role, but you also understand why. This next question is, how do you handle stressful situations? And this is another one of those questions where you want to understand, well, why? Why would they be asking me this? Well, it's probably because they work in high pressure situations. It is likely that in your time being employed by JPMorgan Chase, you're going to run into stressful situations, and they want to understand that you're going to be able to handle them. You have a system for handling them. So for me, I think it's really important that you let them know that you are comfortable with situations that are stressful. You've dealt with them in the past, and they tend to bring out the best in you. These are the bullets you want to touch on when you're answering this question to impress a recruiter, HR person, or a hiring manager. So an answer might sound something like this. That's a really great question. And I would say that most of the jobs I've held in my career have been high pressure situations, which is okay. I actually enjoy that. For me, I kind of like the pressure. I think it brings out the best in me, and I'm really comfortable. For example, in my last job, and then you can give them an example of a time that was high pressure in your last job and how you were able to succeed under pressure. And if you can answer it like that, you'll absolutely crush it. What unique skill or trait would you bring to this position? This is an interesting question. And this is a question that I think we should all be prepared to answer at any given time. And ideally, what you are looking for here is something that you possess that your competition won't, right? So what is it that you have from a skill, experience, competency, education, industry alignment, industry diversification standpoint that others won't? I call this your unfair advantage. And what is it that you have that other people won't? And then you want to share that. Like for me, for example, in my career, I could say I have a YouTube channel. I have a social media presence that I can leverage for additional opportunity. Or I could say that I have been in both the corporate recruiting world and the agency recruiting world. So having lived in both camps, I understand the industry from a different perspective that's more varied. So what you want to find is, what is it you have that others don't? And that is what you want to play up here. It's your unique skill or unique talent that you bring to this role that would allow you to succeed. And that's one last point. You have to make sure that it's something that would allow you to succeed more effectively. It needs to be a benefit. This next question is, what is your biggest failure in life and what did you learn from it? This is a tough question, right? Because if you're getting this question, you're going to be very vulnerable. What's your biggest failure? Like, wow, that's talk about hitting me right between the eyes with a question. A few things here that are really important. One, they're asking you a question like this, you're going to have to be vulnerable. You're going to have to share something was a legitimate failure. It can't be something small, the time you lost out on a deal, right? Like something small. It should be something big. I would probably do something career related, right? I think that's important. But it's also really important to show how you've learned from this. I also have a rule called the first 50% rule. And anytime a company asks me a question about a time I failed, a time I didn't succeed, a time I got negative feedback, anything like that, I always use an example from the first 50% of my career. And I do that because I want to put distance between myself and the failure. Not that it's not okay to fail. It's okay to fail. But quite frankly, if I've been working for 14 years in my industry, I prefer it be something that happened in the first 7 years, because then I can also demonstrate how I've learned from it and how it hasn't been something that's repeated itself in my more recent work history. So choose something in the first 50% of your career, be authentic about it, and then tell them what you learned from there. Communicate how, since you've made that mistake, you are now better off having done that. And if you do that, you'll nail it. This next question is, tell me about a time you've worked in a closely related field. This is just basically a good opportunity for you to demonstrate job and career alignment, right? You're being asked a layup question. Have you worked in this field before? Have you done similar work before? Tell us about this. Now, it's easy to get this question right, but not everybody's going to maximize this question. And the way to maximize the benefit of answering this question is you don't only want to tell them, oh, I've worked in this field for 7 years, in this role, and this role. You also want to communicate to them some of your accomplishments. Specifically, you want to quantify your impact. So if you can say, I've worked in this industry for 5 years, in the last role, I was promoted twice, and in the last year that I was there, I expanded my territory by 30%, resulting in an increase of profits by 15%, which led to $200K of more revenue for my team. Something like that. What I did there was quantifying it, right? I showed them, this is what I did, this is the task I undertook, this was the improvement, and this was the financial bottom line. And I did it over this period of time. That's how you quantify your impact. So if you're going to answer a question like this, I would say the basics is explain to them why you're a good fit and how you have career and industry alignment, but maximize the benefit by telling them a little bit of what you've accomplished in that time. I specifically am in favor of quantifying your impact, but if you have another way that you want to share what you've done and why you're a good fit, that'll also work. Now, one of the questions you're going to be asked, or the type of questions rather, are behavioral interview questions. They are some of the more challenging questions to answer, but they're also some of the more popular, so you have to know how to answer them. That's why I made this video here. This video here, I give you a technique on how to answer behavioral interview questions, and I give you actual behavioral interview questions you will be asked in your interview. And just like this video, I teach you how to answer them. So I'm done here, but I'll see you over there.